The painters are still hanging over the stern of your ship, painting over the old name, when the first bad news arrives. You are standing on the bridge wing, the narrow open balcony beside the ship's control room, watching the letters of your ship's name go on wet. They are up there because a sold ship almost always gets a new name from its new owner. The ship is a bulk carrier, a floating warehouse for coal and grain that takes 180,000 tons of cargo. Since Tuesday, it is yours. You paid $47.5 million for it, and it is 9 years old, which is exactly why you could afford it. The bad news is a text from your broker. Today's charter rates came out lower than the rates your loan math was built on. Nothing on board has changed since Tuesday. Same engine, same crew, same captain. The only thing that moved is a signature in a shipping registry. So you carry one question down the stairs from the bridge wing. What exactly did you pay $47 million for, and how does this much steel actually turn into money? The obvious answer says a ship earns money the way a truck earns money. It hauls things, and people pay for the hauling. And the hauling does pay. In 2025, a bulk carrier like yours earned on average about $15,500 a day. That is the number left after the voyage costs, the fuel, and the port fees. Running the ship costs about $6,400 a day. The difference is roughly $9,000 a day, and across a year that is a bit over $3 million flowing to whoever owns the steel. For one evening at the kitchen table, that looks wonderful. Then you do the division that your accountant did in week 1. $3 million a year against $47 million paid up front is about 7%. A boring bond fund pays close to that, needs no crew, and cannot sink in a storm. So the hauling alone cannot be the reason the richest shipping families in the world keep buying these things. Something else is paying them. It takes you a full year of ownership to see what it is. Start with what you actually bought, because it is more than steel. Marco, the ship's captain, shows you on your first full day. Marco has run this ship for 6 years, and he came with it. Because at sea, the crew and the rental contract usually transfer together with the hull. He starts you at the engine room, where a diesel the size of a townhouse turns a shaft as thick as an old oak trunk. The tour ends in the crew mess, where the day's schedule hangs on a magnet board. Every person in that mess is on your payroll now. Their wages, their food, the ship's insurance, the spare parts in the storeroom, the repairs, even a tax charged on the ship's size. All of it lands in one bucket the industry calls daily operating expense. For a ship like yours, that bucket takes about $6,400 every single day. Not every working day. Every day, because the crew eats and the insurance runs whether the holds are full or empty. The ship burns that money loaded with ore, and it burns it exactly the same sitting empty at anchor, waiting. That is the first honest fact of ownership. You did not buy a machine that starts earning when you switch it on. You bought a small floating town, and its bills arrive every day whether it works or not. The second fact is about who actually pays you, because it is not the people whose cargo you carry. A week after the handover, Marco slides the charter papers across the chart table so you can finally read what you inherited. Your ship is rented out to an operator, the way an apartment is rented out to a tenant. The operator is a cargo company whose logo is painted on the funnel, and most people would mistake its name for the owners. The deal is called a time charter. The operator pays you one fixed sum for every day of use and buys its own fuel while you keep the ship alive. Crew, insurance, repairs, all of that daily expense stays yours. The operator fills the holds, plans the routes, deals with the ports. It rents instead of owning because a rental can be handed back and a mortgage cannot. You own the asset and never touch a single ton of the coal it moves. The logo on the funnel is theirs. The name in the registry and the loan behind it are yours. That average $15,500 a day flows from their business into yours, and your whole daily profit is the $9,000 gap between that rate and your costs. And here's the third fact. The one the broker's text was warning you about on day 1. That gap is not yours to keep steady. The daily rate is set far away from you because the world decides each month how much coal and grain it wants moved. The year before you bought, The average rate for ships like yours was over $19,000 a day. The year you bought, it averaged 15.5. That is a drop of about 19%, and you did nothing to cause it and could have done nothing to stop it. Genco, one of the biggest American owners with about 44 ships, published what that drop did to a whole fleet. The cash its operations produced fell from about $127 million in 1 year to about $32 million the next, divided by 4. The ships were the same ships, the crews the same crews. Only the daily rate had moved. Your gap of $9,000 a day lives entirely on that market number, and nobody promises you it will move back up. The fourth fact arrives on a schedule, roughly every few years, and it is called dry dock. A ship cannot stay in the water forever because steel corrodes and safety certificates expire. The law requires it to be lifted out, scraped, inspected, repainted, and recertified. For a big fleet, the average bill for one of these visits runs about $1.8 million. And while your ship stands on blocks in the yard, it earns nothing at all. The daily rate stops. The daily expense mostly does not, because the crew still gets paid and the insurance still runs. For weeks, the ship earns nothing while the bill climbs past $1 million, and this is not bad luck. It is a planned stop that every owner sees coming years ahead. On top of it sits the shoreside you never see in photos of ships, the office that manages the paperwork, the accountants, the technical managers. In the big fleets, that overhead alone comes to more than $1,300 per ship per day. Owning a ship, it turns out, means running a small company whose whole job is keeping one ship working and rented out. The fifth fact is the bank, and the bank is what makes all the other facts dangerous. Almost nobody buys a ship with cash, and the real deals show the shape. When Genco bought 2 nearly new giant carriers for $145.5 million, the deposit was about $15 million. The rest was drawn from the bank's credit lines. A tenth down, the rest borrowed against the ship itself. Now walk through what that means in a falling market. The steel is the collateral. If the resale price of your ship drops far enough, the loan behind it becomes bigger than the thing securing it. Then the bank calls, not to chat, but to demand cash or the keys. That is why serious owners wrap every hull in its own little company. One ship, one firm. It is often registered in Liberia, a small African country that runs one of the world's biggest ship registries. Marco says it without drama, over coffee up on the bridge wing. If one ship drowns in debt, it drowns alone, and the rest of the fleet sails on. You thought you had bought a vehicle. You had bought a very large loan with a crew living inside it. Which would you take? One fixed rate for 3 years, or whatever the market pays tomorrow? Put it in the comments. Now put the 2 dates side by side, because this is where the real answer finally surfaces. In October 2024, a 9-year-old carrier like yours sold for $47.5 million. 9 months later, a similar ship 4 years younger went for $63.6 million. Same class of steel, same ocean, different day on the market. Ship prices move like stock prices. They can lose or gain tens of % in a year, while the ship itself does not change a single rivet. And that movement is bigger money than anything the cargo ever brings in. Your $3 million a year from hauling took 12 months of crews, storms, inspections, and invoices. A well-timed sale can move 10 times that in one signature. So here's the answer to the question from the bridge wing, and it is not the answer you expected on Tuesday. The freight was never the business. The freight pays the crew, the bank, and the yard while you wait. The business is the difference between 2 dates, the day you buy the steel and the day you sell it. You did not buy a truck that floats. You bought a bet on the price of ships. Once you see it, the whole strange industry finally makes sense. The famous names paint logos on funnels and own almost nothing, because owning is capital, debt, and risk, and renting is flexibility. And the owners most people have never heard of hold the actual ships. The big owners run fleets because scale cuts the bills. The largest bulk company on the market, Star Bulk, runs about 136 ships and gets its daily expense down near $5,100. That is more than $1,000 a day cheaper than what a small owner pays for the same work. And every one of those fleets was built the same way. Someone bought hulls in the years nobody wanted them, kept them rented through the slow years in between, and sold when everyone wanted ships again. Buying cheap and waiting is the whole skill, and the fleets are the proof that it works. Every ship in this story also ends the same way, and knowing that ending changes how you think about owning one. After roughly a quarter of a century of work, the hull is worth more as material than as a ship. The reason is simple. The inspections needed to keep it sailing start costing more than the ship can earn. The last voyage is to a scrapping beach, places like Alang on the west coast of India. There, the ship is run up onto the sand at high tide and taken apart by hand, torch by torch, plate by plate. The steel is weighed and sold. Nothing about your ship is forever. Not the name on the stern, which you painted over yourself, not the charter, not the rate. The hull under your feet will end as scrap on a beach like that one, and buyers price every ship with that ending in mind, even when the owner forgets it. Your ship is 9 years old. You are not its first owner, and you will not be its last. So what do you do with this answer? Standing on dry land with a normal salary and no registry in Liberia? One habit, and it costs nothing. Whenever someone offers you a thing that pays a daily or monthly rate, look past the rate. Ask what happens to the price of the thing itself, and who takes that loss. An apartment to rent out, a truck on lease, a machine on contract. The question is the same for all of them. The rate is the visible number, and it is almost never where the story is decided, because the price of the thing itself moves more money than the rate ever pays. The owner's real result lives in the gap between what the thing cost and what it will be worth, and everything in between mostly covers its own costs. That one check, done before you pay, is the main lesson this ship taught you. 18 months in, you are back on the bridge wing with 2 mugs, one for you and one for Marco. The rates recovered some, the dry dock is booked for spring, and the loan is 4 payments smaller. Below you, on the stern, the paint you watched go on wet has already dulled to the same gray as the rest of the hull. In the right evening light, you can still make out the old name showing faintly under yours. Someday someone will paint over yours the same way. That no longer bothers you. The coal pays the bills, the bank gets paid on its date, and somewhere ahead there is a morning when ship prices run high again and yours goes on the market. That is the day you actually get paid. Until then, the ship works, Marco keeps the schedule on the magnet board, and you own exactly what you paid for. Not a truck that floats, but 180,000 tons of steel, bought on a cheap day and waiting for the expensive one you will sell it on.